Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be part 118, chapter 118, entitled Showing Up with Clouds. Chiyo drove to UA, and as she did, she couldn't help but think about Maboroshi Kumo. That man looked and acted a lot like Shirakumo Oboro, but he had purple mist-like hair and golden eyes like the warp villain of USJ, and since that villain had always been covered by mist, they didn't know what he looked like. There were similarities, not enough to be proof, and she only knew what Kurogiri looked like from some pictures that the cameras had recorded. Maboroshi, though, had seemed genuine in his worry for Midoriya. If the neighbor really was Kurogiri, he clearly didn't want to be a villain. At least, that was her first impression. And while she didn't know Midoriya very well, she knew about his issues, and that he would trust his neighbor spoke a lot about the man's personality. Midoriya had faced up against Kurogiri directly, and Midoriya didn't seem to suspect the other. Or, given how Midoriya seemed to have requested for Bakugo to get another chance, he was giving the villain a chance, if he suspected Maboroshi to be Kurogiri. She didn't know what Midoriya was thinking, so she didn't know. More than the slight resemblance to Kurogiri, though, she was stumped by his resemblance to Shirakumo. She remembered the blue-haired boy, his radiant smiles, his sheepish laughs, his apologies that tumbled out of his mouth when he came to her with yet another injury. He got a lot of small injuries, nothing serious at least. At least, nothing too serious, until his work studies, when he died. So what was with Maboroshi's resemblance to Shirakumo? She didn't know. Perhaps a relative. But she would likely have to see about getting someone to find out. Not Aizawa. He was about to do the raid on the Dual Eyes headquarters. She had her own project, on the medical doctor she was working on, which she was getting closer and closer to. She was on to something, she knew it, and once she had the final pieces of the puzzle, she would be able to find out what had happened. She had found a small picture of Dr. Tsubasa, him walking somewhere, but then he disappeared again. But this was the first sighting of him in a long time, and she would follow after it as best as she could. So, who could see about looking into the neighbor a bit? Maybe Yamada. Though if he did, he would be very emotional, same as Kayama. But they were also the ones who knew Shirakumo the best. They would know if Maboroshi was related. Though as she thought about their names, she realized how similar they were. Only a few letters differ between them. Perhaps Chiyo was just being suspicious for no reason, but still, it was worth checking out. However, that investigation could wait. Maboroshi didn't seem to be a threat at the moment. First, she had to make sure Midoriya was okay. She pulled into the parking lot and signaled for some nearby medical bots. Nezu had those things stationed all over the campus to help. They appeared, and soon Midoriya was loaded up onto a stretcher and taken to her office. Once in her medical wing, she had the bots put him on the bed, before she hooked him up on the monitors. As the time passed, she wrote a report, sent emails, kept track of his vitals, but mostly she let him rest. She also got him a school uniform for today. He should be fine to go to classes after all, as long as he took it a bit easy. Things were normal for a couple hours, and she woke him up about an hour before classes started. And by now, it seemed the quirk had fully set in, as the boy had a head full of fluffy, cloudy green hair that seemed to float and wisp up. He also seemed to be generating some clouds around him, unable to stop himself, though they quickly dissipated, resulting in a few small clouds that just floated around. The boy's dark shadow quirk seemed happy, though, making pleased rumbling sounds, bounding from cloudlet to cloudlet. "I would like to do another CAT scan with you, and after some breakfast, if you feel up to it, you can go to your classes," she said, withholding a yawn, exhausted from having only gotten a few hours of sleep before she had woken up from Midoriya's text. Chiyo had already typed up an email to the teachers that Izuku had unlocked another quirk, so that would let them know to keep an eye on Midoriya throughout the day if something unexpected happened. Midoriya gave a nod, and they proceeded. She took the CAT scan, something she was now trying to do after every quirk he developed, and then got him some breakfast from lunch rush, letting him change into the new school uniform she had fetched earlier while he was asleep. For today, though, he would have to borrow supplies from his classmates. She came back to him being dressed and handed him the food. "Once you've eaten, feel free to head to class. I already sent an email informing them you had a new quirk, so if you have any mishaps, they know the reason. If you start feeling any sort of pain, let them know and then come back here. We haven't had any issues with your quirk developments yet, but I'd rather not start now," she warned sternly. Midoriya gave a nod. "Thank you," he said, giving her a smile. "Of course," Chiyo said, giving him a smile and waving him off. Soon he had finished his breakfast, and then left her office. Izuku made his way to the classroom, unable to help but sometimes reach up to his head and feel the cloudy hair that came up. It seemed to be a mixture of physical hair and the clouds, which was really interesting. He couldn't help but wonder if the clouds produced from his hair, but if that was the case, why did the clouds appear around his body? Also, the clouds seemed to be tinted green, like his hair had been colored, and was now colored still. Maybe it wasn't really cloud generation, but more like moisture manipulation. Like he could condense the particles in the air to make clouds, or make clouds solid enough to hold someone up. That would be really interesting to try at some point. He had seen Kumo could do it, so he should be able to. He couldn't wait to start working with the quirk, since Kumo mentioned he wasn't sure if Izuku would get his base quirk, or what his quirk was after it had apparently mutated. Kumo hadn't been very clear on his mutation, which was fair. People who had their quirks mutated often were a bit hesitant, given that those mutations happening was usually a sign of heavy trauma. A near-death experience would count. He sat in the classroom. Once more, his sensei wasn't in yet. It was a long while before Tenya came in. "Good morning, Izuku." The boy started to greet him. "Izuku, what? Your hair!" the boy said, gesturing worriedly at his hair. "Oh, it's a new quirk," Izuku answered, giving a small smile, embarrassed a bit, and the clouds around him thickened up a bit. "It makes your hair look really poofy," Tanya said, coming closer, reaching a hand out before he hesitated. "May I feel?" he asked. Izuku flushed a bit, the clouds becoming more prominent, but he gave a nod. "Yes," he said, voice quiet, as he gave a hesitant smile, trusting his friend. Tenya smiled and reached over, petting Izuku's hair, and Izuku could feel it. The sensation was a bit different, but he could feel the hand as it displaced his hair. So weird, but so interesting. Slowly, more and more kids filtered in, all of them exclaiming various words of surprise and compliments. They kept saying it was so cool, wanting to touch his hair and the clouds. Izuku was becoming more and more flustered and more buried under the clouds, until eventually he was completely covered in clouds. It was weird, being completely surrounded by clouds. Yet it also made him think about his other quirks, and using the clouds to give Kaida more darkness, he could feel that Z was getting stronger now. being surrounded by the clouds. He also wondered about using electric defense. Could he channel the lightning through the clouds, making them into storm clouds? There were so many possibilities. "Man, Mito bro, you got your own personal hiding spot," Kirishima said, giving a laugh. "I don't know how to get rid of them," Izuku whined. "Why not use erasure on it?" Uraraka suggested. "I can't use my quirk on myself," Izuku replied. "Derp, that makes sense," the girl said, the sound of a face palm ringing out. Bakugo cackled. "I can blast them away for you, nerd," the boy said. Even without being able to see Bakugo, Izuku knew he was grinning. "No thanks," Izuku said. The bell rang, and the door slid open. There was a pause, and then a loud, almost panicked shout. "Zashi!" from Aizawa, which instantly made Izuku's heart clench in worry. Why was Aizawa shouting? He struggled a bit, poking his head out from the cloud to look around. He didn't see anything amiss, but then he realized Aizawa was staring at him with wide, red eyes, looking as pale as a ghost. "Sensei?" He tried to ask, though his voice was silenced from erasure. The clouds were now completely gone from him, as well as the feelings from all of his other quirks, which was vaguely uncomfortable, and he could no longer feel Kaida's emotions thrumming in the background. He saw Yamada appear and also take in a deep breath, his eyes going wide behind his glasses. The red eyes blinked, Aizawa gripping onto Yamada's arm like a lifeline, trembling a bit, showing so much emotion that it was as startling as it was worrying. Had he done something wrong? Would his teachers be mad at him? He didn't want to lose Aizawa's kindness. "What's wrong? Recovery Girl said she told you that I got a new quirk," he said, hands twisting anxiously. "She didn't tell us what quirk you got," Yamada replied, tone gentle. "Give us a moment, listeners. Eraser and I need a moment. It's not your fault, little listener. Your new quirk reminds us of someone we knew a long time ago," the man softly spoke, giving a slightly sad smile, tugging Aizawa away. The door closed behind the teachers, and the students broke out into conversation, all of them surprised at having seen their homeroom teacher so emotional. It wasn't hard for Izuku to connect the pieces, to think about the stories Kumo had told him, the way the man mentioned a loud friend and a quiet friend, having once been a hero before something happened. He hadn't known his teachers had lost someone, but he supposed they wouldn't tell someone random. But his quirk reminded them of their friend, and Kumo had supposedly died. Well, Izuku supposed he had connected some of the pieces of the past. He didn't know what to do with this information, though. Kumo had been pretty clear he didn't want to open up old wounds, but now... well, it might be a bit too late for that. The class was murmuring, all of them looking worriedly at each other. "Midoriya, do you know what happened?" Yayorozu asked him. "I have an idea, but it's not my place to say my guesses," Izuku said, earning a nod from the vice president. "Of course. We wouldn't want to invade our teacher's privacy," she agreed. About 5 minutes passed before Aizawa came back in. "Sorry about that. I was not expecting to see clouds as Midoriya's new quirk. No, I will not explain my reaction. It's none of your business. Midoriya, I would like to see you for lunch to discuss your new quirk, if that's all right with you," Aizawa said, looking at him in the end with such warm, dark eyes. Izuku gave a nod. "It's fine," he said, offering a hesitant smile to his sensei, who gave a nod back at him. The class passed by like normal, except midnight wasn't there, and eventually lunchtime came, and Izuku went to meet with his senseis for lunch. All right, listeners, this concludes chapter 118 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 119 will be up next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one. We're finally getting to a point where there's a reveal taking place, right? I love the fact that the author gave us a classroom reaction to this, and I think that they did such a nice job really kind of showcasing that. So drop your comments below, let me know what you're thinking, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.